All right, so hello everybody. My name is Valentin Prurius. I am a manager of data management unit at the World Bank Group, actually. I have with me Dr. Sorgel, who is a professor at the University of Buffalo and also consults with us, Denisa Popescu and Tyler from MarkLogic, who are going to help go through the presentation and talk about how we went about harmonizing multi-modal data at the World Bank. So before we get into the details, this is what the outline of the presentation. First, we'll talk about the bank group itself, what we are about, and after that, we'll frame the problem. So we looked at harmonizing the data within the context of enterprise search. Dr. Sorgel is going to talk more about the ontology and what we're using it for and how it's being developed. Tyler is going to go into some details about how we went implementing it inside of MarkLogic. And at the end, Denisa is going to wrap up by talking about what we have learned. So first, a little bit about the World Bank and World Bank Group, in case you haven't heard about us. So the mission of the institution is to end poverty and build shared prosperity. The bank group, when it's referred to as a group, it's made up of 5 institutions, IBRD, IDA. Those two together work with the public sector, with governments of different countries. And both of them together are called World Bank, IFC, International Finance Corporation, and MIGA, Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency. Those two work primarily with private sector, again, developmental institution. And the last one, ICSID, it's small tribunal. It's a dispute resolution because no country, no government has true jurisdiction over the World Bank. So the size of the institution, just to put things in context, we have about 16,000 staff, and about the same amount of consultants at any point in time. We operate out of 150 country offices, and we are represented by 170 nationalities, so it's a very diverse group. Right now, we operate out of 240 locations outside the United States, so this is just gives a little bit more about where information originates and how do we support our clients. This gives a little bit of idea of the types of things the bank does. So if you see, it's multiple sectors, multiple industries, and the content is also very diverse. The institution itself has evolved this focus. It started from focusing building infrastructure, helping governments build infrastructures, and progressed all the way through governance and data. So right now, the bank is operating more like a knowledge bank. At the end, it's still lends. It's a lending institution, and IFC makes investments in the private sector. But data, there is more and more focus on data. The bank group itself has 17 sustainable development goals. So I'm not going to go into details on each one of them. But again, the major objectives are to reduce the poverty in the world and to increase the shared prosperity. The IT portion within the bank group is consolidated in one institution. It's run out of IBRD. There are some small IT shops within member institutions as well. So these 4 items are the cornerstones of our strategy around cloud, mobile, data, and social. Our group focuses primarily on the data, so we have the business intelligence with us as well. Now we'll get back to the actual subject where we applied this data harmonization. So it was done within the context of enterprise search application. When we were putting together enterprise search application, so we saw that the content comes from many, many different places, and it's all kind of different shapes. And the problem which people have by looking at our search goes beyond the simple indexing of the content. So the questions which people are asking is, where's the information coming from? Who does it belong to? What do the titles mean? What do different things that are being presented about the content mean? And at the same time, the typical search questions also come up. Basically, where is the result I'm looking for? So if I know about a specific document, I'm looking for it, and it's not coming up at the top, why is it exactly the case? And if it's not at the top, why isn't it in the first 10 pages of results? So there are multiple aspects of it, but our current solutions in place where the way we approached in the past the problem is we build individual indexes for different content sources, and that created, it continues to create right now confusion among staff members, especially the ones that are not really familiar how to look for content. So basically, they are not sure, where do I look for? So if I know a person that worked on a document, do I look in people, or do I look in documents, or do I look in skill finder? Where exactly would I look for a document knowing a person that has written the document? So to address this problem, we decided to put all the content together, unify the search, and not use a single index, regular search index, but use more of a data hub approach. So the challenges. The challenges took two challenges. So first of all, the bank as an institution produced a lot of content over the past 60 years or so. All of our solutions internally have grown organically. Some of them were purchased, some of them were built. All kinds of integrations exist, but at the end, the content still resides in a multitude of repositories. So to give you an idea of scale, so far we have done 15 or so different repositories, and this is just scratching the surface. So some of the repositories have a lot of content inside of them, something in tune of 10 million documents. Some of them are smaller, 100,000 or tens of thousands, and they have different purposes and they have different level of curations of content. What that causes is that there is a lot of content that is spread or copied into multiple repositories. Some of it is historical, some of it is done on purpose by people, some of it is done because of the disclosure policies of how the institution is supposed to disclose the content externally. So the content itself, because the systems and the people who put them together and the people who operated this content production have changed over the years, and of course, like many institutions, we have limits to our governance over the content. There is limited documentation available, and some of the knowledge has been lost. So we have to find another way of sorting out what content we have in which repository. About duplication, we already talked, and another part which was important, which we hadn't done before, is allowing searching through the full text of vast repository of documents, and not just documents, all kinds of other content. And by putting together multiple content types in one place, the relevancy, the algorithm for relevancy started to become a difficulty. So that's where we started putting a little bit more emphasis on harmonizing the attributes and trying to leverage more the metadata that we have about the content in the relevancy algorithm. So this is just to give you a couple of examples of how the application looks like, and just to show that the different types of sources where the information comes from and the types of presentations of the content. But all the content right now that is within the repository has been harmonized. So there is a set of attributes which has the same name, the same meaning across all types of content. So starting from a person to a document to a project or a loan, basically internal constructs that we have within the bank. The requirements from the users are also very difficult and very diverse. So there are different types of people, and they look for different types of content. Simple problems we always address very well. So looking for a person or looking for a specific project is very easy to make sure that the relevant content is at the top. But when somebody is looking for something and you're not really sure, is it operational in nature or is it administrative in nature, then becomes more difficult. The other part is that users, people have unreasonable expectations. They have an expectation that if I put a set of keywords, then there is a content that has those keywords in it. So even if you were to look at it simply, so like for example, Amex, American Express, so we don't necessarily have a page anywhere in our repositories that have those words in it, but they still expect the right result to come at the top. So we put a couple of little workarounds of how to handle that. So the two examples which you see here, one is the direct answer. So what we have been doing is we've been looking at the logs of what people are looking for and providing direct answers. And again, the direct answers themselves are also stored within MarkLogic. So MarkLogic can determine at what point in time is it best to show at the top a direct answer, and where do we put the content that has been best curated. So a couple of other challenges which we have is we're using the topical taxonomy, which is very comprehensive, but it has many layers inside of it. So it's difficult for people to understand and to navigate. So it's also a usability issue. So it's not only a technology problem, it's more understanding your own content and what is important and allowing people to navigate through it. So another part which we have added in our application was acronyms. Again, it's another internal construct, is the bank as an institution has a lot of acronyms, starting from how units are called, ending, all kinds of abbreviations. Just people like, simplifying things. So that was an addition, and integrating acronyms together with the search. So that's something which we're adding to the application. So on a high level, what's the approach? So first of all, we're trying to put together a consolidated view. When you're putting together a consolidated view, it's important to identify a set of common attributes to be used across all different sources of content. Present a single result set and do as much as possible of bringing to the top the results which would be most relevant based on the query. So that requires some of the analysis of the query itself before serving the results. The next one is we came to the realization that it's impossible to address, even though the best practice would be to address the content issues at the source, it's just not physically possible within a reasonable amount of time to address amount of content of issues that have been accumulated over decades. So we are compensating for the content deficiencies within the data hub. And that's where we're doing the harmonization across the attributes and doing initial deduplication or similarity checks across the content. And at the same time, we are capturing as many signals as we can along with the content from the rest of our repository. So for example, we are capturing how many times people click on a specific information resource. So if a person opens a document, we keep track of that, and that is fed as an information along with the document or any information resource which we have within the repository. And later on, it will be factored in how the ranking of the results is adjusted based on that. So the program for enterprise search started primarily as a technology, so we're trying to see how it can be addressed technologically. But as we progressed, it became more and more clear that the technology itself cannot help a problem like this. So there is no magic bullet, unfortunately. So we've switched the focus about a year ago to focus to more look deeper into the content and the intent of the users and to see if we can adjust the usage of technology to mimic that. And harmonization was one of the most important parts. Examples like people would use an attribute country and they'll put things like world inside of it or Europe, which are not really countries. So some people would relate to it, some people would get confused. And that's in the best case. In the worst case scenario, they'll put a unit name as a country, just because a unit happens to be handling a specific country. So those kind of things we had to address in the middle, in the hub, and at the same time try to figure out how can we present on the screen more information for the user to be able to narrow down to the results that they're looking for. So we made extensive usage of facets and all kinds of flavors of indexes. I guess Tyler can speak a little bit more about the mechanical details of that. So, and at the same time, we're trying to pre-process the queries and try to steer them towards either administrative content, like how do I request leave or how do I get compensated for something, versus how to build a compensation system within a country or a compensation, whatever we have done about compensatory policies in different countries. What makes our problem a little bit more difficult is that one of the policies at the bank group, I guess all of our institutions, is that all of the content that is generated as part of doing business needs to be retained forever. So it's unlimited retention of the content. So because of this, there is a very vast amount of content which is mixed between the documents as well as communications, emails, presentations, and so on. So sorting out through them and figuring out what a user wants to see at the top is a difficult part. So I will stop here. I will let Dr. Sorgel talk more about the ontology. And at the end, we'll leave sufficient time to talk through and get some questions answered.
Good afternoon. I'm Dagbert Sorgel, the practical ontology guy. Can you all hear me? Okay, good. So this slide, in a nutshell, shows what I will talk about. In the middle is what we want to do. This requires connecting and harmonizing many different types of data. The types of data are defined in an ontology. The specific data values are defined in taxonomies, more broadly speaking, reference data, which assign to each data value a specific URI. So what is an ontology? You will find many complicated definitions. Mine here is simple. It's an entity relationship model at a general conceptual level. It defines all kinds of data that exist and are used in the bank. So that means the things and the processes the bank works with, and it means relationships between things and processes and so forth. So you could say it's a canonical data model for all of the bank's data. It's not an entity relationship diagram. Those have much too limited expressivity to express the complex data that an organization like the bank uses. And it's not any restrictive model in any of various types of model or software. It's at a conceptual level. So why did the bank endeavor to develop slowly an ontology? It is needed everywhere. It's needed for harmonizing data. So we can identify where the same type of data is known in the different data fields in different repositories, different data stores in the bank. It all needs to be unified. If the bank ever wanted to really know what data they really have and create an index to all the data, they need an ontology as a basis for that index. There's support for text analytics. If you want to extract information from text, you need to think about the entity types, like person and people and dates and money amounts and countries and what have you. And you need to think about the relationship types and how they are expressed in language, like causes or it's a kind of, etc. So you need an ontology behind text analytics. So far I've talked about data. The ontology also supports search. Otherwise it wouldn't be much use. So inferencing. I think there was one presentation today where they had a semantic network with inferences. To be done in MarkLogic can do that. So user interfaces are guided by the ontology. There are many different types of reference data, topics, countries, document types. To put all of these reference data in a framework done by the ontology. And finally, it's sort of the intellectual guide, if you will, for data governance. So the ontology serves many purposes. Now here is an example on top of some entity types. Legal entity, which divides into person and organization, and they are person and organization are grouped under legal entity because many relationships are the same, like where is the person located, where is the organization located. Many types of data are the same for both. And then there are some examples underneath. So you have people, and there is, let me just see, work after all or not? No, here. McNeil and Chung, people, specific people, URI, they're organizations, and they have a URI, and organization one is the World Bank Group. Their places, their topics. Okay. So again, the top, the general kind of entities, underneath specific reference data which specify values of these entities. And okay, So next come relationships. And that's really where the core is, how you define data. It's how these entities are related. And you can see the definitions on top. I'll go through one example. Let me see if I can get up. No. There. It's the wrong button. So there is McNeil, a person works in organization. For this, we need to specify the organization works on, the official unit within the organization, what the role of that person is in the unit. So the official unit of the World Bank group is the official unit of the president. His role is leader of that unit. His job title is president, and there are dates associated with that piece. So you could try to do this in triples, but I wouldn't. It's too complex. There's another example for organizations. So the organization, number 10, see, this organization is located in Kenya. The role of Kenya for the ADISO is at the headquarters. The level of this location is the country, and they started to have this at headquarters in 2012, and they go on till further notice. So that gives you a sense of how the ontology defines data. And then my last slide. You see, the relationships are complex, and there are many. So to manage that complexity, we decided on a two-level architecture, illustrated here on the relationship between a document and a legal entity. This document can be produced by people, but also by organizational units. So legal entity comes in here handy. The broad relationship is created by, and created by is understood very, very broadly. But there are many different ways in which this can actually happen. So the legal entity could actually be the author, or it could be the translator, or an illustrator, or an editor, or a contract manager from which the document emanated. There may be, when we started, I think we are about 25. But it's time we are done, there are probably 50. So the alternative is to either do 50 relationship types, or do one broad relationship type and then have these refiners that make it more specific and that are more easily added. Because those are just, actually this is a piece of reference data. The roles a legal entity can have in producing a document. And it's much easier to put a new value in there than to add a whole new relationship type to the database. So let me just make, so this then is the basis for a harmonized data model in XML, which Tyler will talk about momentarily. And let me just say, while MarkLogic is able to deal with loosely structured data, it also supports highly structured data, and you want to use highly structured data when that supports the work. And we can definitely do much more precise search with having the data with that high degree of structure than just free text.
All right, can you guys hear me? Yeah. All right, so I'm going to talk about how we implemented this in MarkLogic. And basically, I'm going to tie together what Valentin talked about in search with the ontology. So first of all, what we did at the World Bank is we ingested the data as is. You guys are hearing that term today. What we did is we took all those tables or services that they were in, we turned it into XML, and we put it into MarkLogic. And then we were able to query that data and see what it looked like. Before that, the bank didn't have all the data in one place, so they didn't know what the data actually was. They knew some of the things, but they didn't know everything about it. So for one instance here, we have something called a team leader. This is a person at the bank over here, and they're part of a project. So the bank has a lot of projects. You guys saw that in the entity mappings before, right? So the team leader is an example of somebody that is a person in there that's inside of a document a lot of times. They could be they could be a part of a MarkLogic project document or an actual physical paper that someone has published about a project talking about this team lead. And what we've done is we've been able to harmonize this data. Before, the team lead might have just had the name, or it might have even had the UPI. But we standardized. We were able to put things in here like preferred label. So if you're an ontologist, you probably have heard of that before. Or the original value. That's actually the value that was in the document that we ingested at the time. And so when we're searching, we want to be able to put those things in there. We want the person that says, hey, I remember what was actually inside that document when it was created, so I want to search for that. That's kind of a rare case, but you want to support it anyways. The case that normally happens is you've got this preferred label that the bank has standardized on and says, we're going to have first, comma, last name when we perform people. What we did is for every single entity type, like people, we've decided what the preferred label is going to be, and that in the bank is the full name, and then we persisted that data into all the different objects. So we're able to use that ontology to be able to do that for every single entity type. And we haven't done it all the way through yet. What we're doing is we're picking the high valued ones and we're iterating over that and doing it as we have time to do it. Because as a data modeler, it takes a long time to get everything perfect, and you could just be over and over again changing stuff and never really release. So we're getting to where we want to be and then just keep iterating over it. So another example over here is titles. This is a loaded thing at the bank. There's so many different ways to have a title, and you can have something like an alternate title, the display title, the full title, or you could have something like, they do volumes a lot at the World Bank. So you could have this version volume 1, and then you don't really want to display all of the volume 1, volume 2s all the way through and have a whole bunch of them. So this allows us to be able to have something called the full title, display title, part designation, all of these. This all came from the ontology. So we're able to take that ontology and then put it into an XML format. So this is what we're doing with the ontology. What we're able to do for other features for data harmonization, I'll talk about personal author in a second as well. We're able to use MarkLogic's capabilities of schema-agnostic. So we can put a schema on data, or we cannot. And so, or we can do soft validation as well. And so what we've been doing is we put the data in, we've created this ontology that we then use create an XML XSD, which is a schema in XML, and that allows us to be able to say, okay, for this harmonized data, we're actually going to have a schema on that we want to make sure that it's valid against. But for this data that we haven't harmonized, that we have no idea what it looks like before we put it in, we're just going to allow that to come in as is, and we'll just take whatever the systems give us, and we'll work across that data. So for instance, here's an example of that. So there's all these different systems. I anonymize them. Let's just say source A, B, and C here, and they have author in many different ways. We call it person author because there could be an author of an organization as well. An organization could have authored a document. So we're talking about a person here, and they might have wanted to just have identifiers in there. It's kind of weird to do that, but if they wanted to not have the first name, they want to have a lookup, right? But then they wanted to have multiple ones, and they're inside of, this is a relational database, right? So they don't want to create another column in the relational database and say, author 2, right? Or 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 until you run out of authors, right? Or so they wanted to comma separated, which, okay, you're not going to have commas and numbers when it's an identifier. That makes sense. But then you've got to be able to persist that to all of your different applications that are looking at your data. right? So, and then you've got an example, that's just source A. Well, source B, that's kind of normal, except that they padded the IDs with a 0, which, because for some reason that's how that application was written. They wanted to pad them with a 0. So then you've got to fix all of your IDs coming in together so that they're all the same. Then over here in C, they decided to not actually do IDs. They did last name, comma, first name, right? And then we've got to match that up with an ID and hope that there's nobody that has the same first name and last name. John Smith, that never happens, right? So, we have to do those kind of things. And then they might have something where they weren't able to use comma anymore, right? So they've got a different delimiter there. I also was talking about this. This is a little funny thing that happens when we first did this harmonization. We didn't know this case of the @ sign. So we put that in there, and then sure enough, there was a bug that came up and said, oh, all of your person authors are getting concatenated with an @ sign on this document. And we went and looked at the document and then searched in the code for @ sign, and there's no place where author and @ sign come together, and then, oh, well, it's got to be the code. So we went back to the source system, and actually there's a few records in the source system where the person decided to put @ sign in there, and it was different than, the DBAs, the people that own the content didn't know that until we told them about it, and, they're fixing the source system now. So this is just a small example. We've got 15 different source systems that we're integrating with right now. We're just adding more as we go. It does take a lot of time. It's no longer a technology issue. So now it's a time of understanding that data, finding out all of these issues, and then bringing them together. So let me just go into a little bit more about this person author. So what we've done for persisting for all of our entities is we have this URI. The end goal is that every entity will actually have a real URI. Right now, we just put stuff there for some of them because we're, like I said, we're harmonizing what we need to, and so that we don't take all of the time harmonizing and then we don't get the product out. So we're adding in what we need to, and as we go, we'll add more things. So the role here too, this isn't in every single one, but in author, we needed to particularly have the role of what kind of author they are. That is a big issue for us in SharePoint. SharePoint, there's so many different organizations at the World Bank that use it, and they use SharePoint in different ways. And so the author field in SharePoint can be used in many different roles and contexts, so that's why that's there to help us identify it. And then this identifier here isn't a MarkLogic identifier, it's a business identifier, kind of linked to this one over here, which is UPI. And then I've already talked about that. This is those preferred labels and original value. And like I said, we need that for searching. So I'm going to talk now about the search features that we're using. This was talked a little bit before. We kind of glazed over it, but there's been a lot of time spent at the World Bank building up a taxonomy. And this taxonomy connects to all the different documents and skills that people have at the bank. And so what we did is we've taken the taxonomy, created those into reverse queries, and then or serialized CTS searches that then we can do a reverse query on, and then we've tagged up all of the documents. So we've enriched the documents tagged with the taxonomy so that then when we do a search, we can see which entities or documents are matched with this taxonomy. And so that really helps to be able to, if somebody is in clean water, they're able to go and look at that taxonomy and see how it relates. One of the other interesting things that we've done for searching is recency. It's been a couple of releases now. In MarkLogic 7, we added the ability to have a range index that allows you to do sorting on the range index, and then you can do a scale or a slope on that sorting. And so we do that for time-sensitive information. So for news and events, so something that comes out in the last couple of days, that's going to be more relevant than something that came out a year ago for news and events. Well, it's the same thing for other data sources, but it's different for each one. So you can't just say, everything that's last year gets extra weighting. You need to be able to have a scale of that weight as well. So we're doing that with the slope factor. So query classification. This one, we've talked about doing it for a long time, and I finally just got the first part of it out, so I'm a little bit happy about that one. what we've decided is that we had one generic scoring algorithm for all queries. And then there was specific weighting in all of those, but we decided that wasn't enough. So what we need to do is we need to classify those queries. We need to find out what is the user trying to convey to us? You know, what type of query is this? Is it an administrative query where they're looking for HR documents? You know, or is it they have a whole taxonomy for document types? So somebody might want to, if you're filing a project document and you type in project document, well, if we're not able to classify that query and see that that's a project document, we might be looking for the text project document and not actually the document type project document. So we're able to identify that query, you know, what type of query it was, and then we're able to do different boosting on our relevancy based on that to help the results go up. So another example here is proximity searching. So what we do is we, in MarkLogic, we can use near queries to identify where the text is within relationship to itself. So if I have a phrase that I'm searching for, you know, so a good example of this is, you know, a project title like clean water in India or something like that. You could, inside of a document, if you just type that in, you're going to find that anywhere in the document, because you don't, if you don't tell MarkLogic that, you know, it doesn't matter where it's at in the document, it's just going to find it anywhere. But it's more relevant, we've decided, if it's closer together. And so we're able to use a near query for that. And then we have distance weighting in MarkLogic so that we can just say the closer it is the more to each other, the more relevant it is. And so we're able to do a lot of things like this to be able to help boost up their queries. And over to Denise now.
Thank you. So I think just to finalize, I wanted to just briefly kind of take you through some of the things that we learned over the last year and a half, I think. The first one is really that we've learned the search. I mean, we knew, I'm data management, I've been data management professional for 15 years, so I knew the search is a content problem. But I think through the approach that we've taken is the first time actually in the organization that we have MDM, reference data management, search under one umbrella, which my boss, Valentin, is managing. So, which is amazing because it's really, you know, having search and, you know, MDM in the same place shows the organization and the management through the search, the data issues that we have behind the scenes. So I think that's, for me as a data management, you know, a professional, has been a great learning, and I think a great improvement of how we as an organization are approaching data management overall. The second one is really, we are using MarkLogic as a hub and really as a search application on top. But so as my colleagues has mentioned before, we are harmonizing on metadata, on reference data, on core things. We are cleaning it up and we are putting it, you know, into the hub, and then the search on top. Now, another thing which is relevant for data management was, in the last 15 years I've been in the bank, keep saying, will all of the source, you know, application fix the data? You know, you are using this reference data, this country list, you are calling, you know, England differently than this one. Nothing happens, or it happens, but it takes much longer for many, you know, different reasons. This is the first time again, for example, with our SharePoint application, which are becoming pretty large in the, you know, organization, is because we've said, you know, I don't care what you do in the source. I'll clean it up. I will put it into the hub, and then through the search you can see the effects of it. And they come back and say, I want to use the reference data and you know, so that's pretty amazing. I mean, as a data management, you know, a professional, it's pretty amazing. So I think that's the first lessons learned. The second one, which is more on purely on search, is a challenging one. How do you balance? I mean, we are now kind of balancing a metadata-based search with the full text. We have very diverse content. I mean, as my colleagues have mentioned, the bank is a pretty diverse, you know, organization. We have emails with attachment of 500,000 pages. You have short documents like news. You have structured data. You have a lot of things, so many things. So then how do you balance that into the retrieval, interface. And it is very challenging because I think the other challenge for us is that we have a very diverse population. So language, also interests, needs. So it's something that I don't think we'll be able to fix, but I think the most important, piece for us is to continuously look at how people are searching and then try to integrate this into the hub and into the approach that we are taking to the relevancy. So I think overall, I wouldn't say we are going to fix the search problem, but I think at least we have a better approach to data management, and I think that's something that us as a data management unit, I think it's really looking forward to see how this will take us. And I think the last piece is the high expectation. I mean, again, from a search point of view, everybody compares with Google, and we always say we are not Google, but but clearly, how do you manage this high expectation within the enterprise? It's pretty challenging, and I think it's something that deals with training and many other things. So that's it. Thank you.
So we'll just take some questions now. If you guys have any questions, we can answer those for you. Yeah, so the question was having to deal with all the different languages that the World Bank has.
Currently, we are not addressing language yet. I mean, we are just dealing with the vocabulary because language, I mean, the fact that the bank, even in English, we are having issue because we are dealing with all subject areas from health to infrastructure. Just addressing that part for English language is something that we are dealing with it now. I think it's phase 2 that we'll look at multi-language and will be probably challenging, but
at least
yeah.
The thing that we're looking at right now is a lot of our publications exist in 7 languages, in all the official languages, so at least trying to separate them apart, and if somebody is looking for a document, at least being able to tell that this is actually the same document, just happens to be in a different language. And it's not necessarily marked that way, but at least we're trying to enhance the user presentation of it as opposed to provide deeper search within different languages. So that's the first step.
Any other questions?
Let me just make a remark on everything everybody expects to search like Google. Well, if you have specific requirements, like the World Bank has, searching like Google is not the solution. As Tyler pointed out, there are many different types of queries people have. Google has no analysis of what type of query you have. But it's very good for what it does, but it does not do many specific things that an organization like the World Bank needs and that we are trying to do. And we have just started with this analysis of the query to find out, is it administrative or is it what they call a knowledge query that's supposed to support the operations of the bank. Now, if it's a knowledge query, is it focusing on a country? Is it focusing on a project, a type of document, statistics? There are many different kinds, and we figured out some patterns, and we figured out some ways to then specifically respond to the type of the query, which is important. And I think we have not fully exploited yet all the capabilities of search that are under the hood in MarkLogic that are available, and that really go beyond other search systems. And they are things we can do then that will much more closely match the needs of the users than just typing in something into a Google search box and doing a free text search against loosely structured data across the World Bank.
I'll give you the mic here. Oh, okay, sure. Here we go. Mics.
Okay, thank you. So in your work here, did you involve the users in the sense of training them on, you're making improvements? Was a lot of it on their side as well, and learning to be better searchers? And also, from the content itself, did you work that end of it at the same time? Like you were making improvements to the search algorithm, but, helping the content be more in tune.
Disha, did you want to take that?
Yeah, I mean, we are. So we are actually, we are going both on the user side. So whenever we have, we get feedback, we analyze, and then within 2 weeks we are, addressing some of the core things that comes across, and especially on the relevancy algorithm. There's something that we are now actually trying to test and see, what type of user query you are addressing with this type of configuration, which one with this type. So, and in terms you're asking about the content owners too, yeah, definitely content owners. So, I mean, we do have a governance structure that now we are is being more operationalized because of this. So I think that the content owners and the webmaster are much more interested to hear news from, what we are doing in terms of the data harmonization, and yes, so it's working.
We're putting more effort in training people, but at the same time, we do have a dedicated search assist help desk, let's put it this way. So if somebody really needs to find a piece of content, they have a place where they can reach out to somebody, and somebody who really knows how to locate the content and understands what's available where, and they'll locate it for them, and they pass the content to the users, and at the same time, they give us the feedback that this is a specific thing they were looking for, they couldn't find it. In a specific context, whatever the context is. So the situations are very different. So there are people who do research in our institution, so those look for very specific kind of content. There are people who are looking for a specific engagement, or they're looking for a specific set of engagements that are similar to engagement. There are people who are looking for expertise, but they're not really sure how to formulate the expertise. So we have all kinds of things. So we also, this time around, along with the beta search, we're trying to put together a one-pager, on both sides, how-to type of thing, how to find a specific item, how to find the project, how to find the document, how to limit, or how to find something across multiple types of entities. So we'll see how that catches on, but so in the spirit of disclosure, just so you know, we do use Google on external websites. So wherever Google has access to our content, that's enabled that way, and we're looking at it. We have tried doing it from the inside, so unfortunately, again, this is not a technology problem. Google search results are what they are, not because of the algorithm. So there are people behind it who also analyze the content, and they try to prevent others from gaming the system. So on the inside, where there is very little signals compared to the scale of the web, it's very difficult from the inside to control, because you would think that, we have 30,000, at least 30,000 people within our organization, if staff, consultants, and other parties that work with us internally, it's still not enough to get a sufficient set of signals to be able to tell which content is significantly better than the other content. So we try to, we hope that there will be a point when we will surpass what Google can do from inside the enterprise, but because we understand the content better. The big leg up that MarkLogic gives us, as opposed to regular search indexes, because we do have all of them. So internally, we do use the FAST from Microsoft. We also use Solar, and we use the Excelid. So we do have all of them already running. So what MarkLogic gives us truly gives us an ability to analyze the content. So we can run complex queries against the content, identify groups of content, and then see what makes it what it is. Why is it not coming? So being able to understand the implications on relevancy, as Tyler has mentioned, that we are now looking at adjusting the relevancy weightings based on analysis of the queries. And of course, the more we build of our ontology into the MarkLogic, the more of that information can be leveraged in things like search. But again, when we got MarkLogic, it wasn't intended for enterprise search. It was intended to be the data hub where we funnel the content through it. Funnel the content from content producing systems to things like intranet, search, and so on.
Just end with one thing. I do remember that Denisa here was saying a couple of, I think it was weeks or months ago, is that it's no longer just search, it's knowledge management. And that's what we're able to do with MarkLogic, is we're able to look at the content and understand it and then harmonize it into the data that the bank needs. That's it. Thank you, guys.
I think